You're listening to Cheddar Chasers, a podcast that inspires entrepreneurs and business owners to stay hungry and enjoy the chase. Each episode, our guests will dive into the numbers, tell you what's working, what they've tried that's failed. But most importantly, you'll learn insights that will help take your business to the next level. And now, here are your hosts, Shane and Sean. Let's f***ing go, Chasers.
All right, Sean, Cheddar
Shane.
Chasers, we're back. We've had a tough time over the last 2 weeks trying to get people on.
Yeah,
It's
scheduling, it was tough.
Yeah, and we landed on a better person anyway.
Yeah, we upgraded.
So today's episode is a local entrepreneur. His name is Jaron, and he's with, I guess it's Scoring now, but he'll give us the whole rundown on that. What's up, Jaron? How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Awesome.
Great. I'm stoked to hear, one, your story, which we'll get into a little bit. But what do you kind of want to start out with in terms of maybe give us just a general overview of what your company is, what your flagship product is, and just general idea for everyone to kind of get an understanding.
And when you started.
Yeah. So the flagship product is Skip and Hole. So it's a combination of skipping stones and cornhole, primarily for like the swimming pool, but you can use it in the lake, river, pond, or even ocean. You can even skip it on the ground or on the beach, which is cool. It started like 2017 was when I started like research and development stuff.
Oh, cool.
What made you want to start it? Was it a school project?
No, I was just wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I was like, okay, what business am I going to start? And I was just like going through random ideas and stuff. And it started where I was like, all right, it would be cool to like figure out a way to retrieve the perfect skipping stone. Like that's kind of like the first kind of thought that came into my mind. And then it kind of evolved from there. So I did some research first to make sure that there could potentially be a market there. Realized that like there was 100 different ways to say skipping stones in like different languages and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then so I was like, okay, it's a worldwide thing that a lot of people already know about, but there's just not the resources to compete and play.
Right.
And so I was like, what if I could create like the standard ball for the sport? So then that was my first goal, was like, okay, how do I create the standard ball for the sport? Like the perfect skipping stone that people could use in like competitions, and it would be biodegradable, one-time use and stuff. But then I was like, all right, how many people are going to buy like a ton of skipping stones just to throw them away in the ocean or the lake or whatever? That gets pretty expensive. And then it's also like, what kind of effects can that have on the environment? If it's like clay, hopefully that's good because it's like neutral and it would biodegrade and it's fine. But then like I started getting into fish food, which I thought would be healthier. But then it's like, well, if the fish don't eat all the food, then it's like now you have an algae bloom and then it throws off the ecosystem and stuff.
So
I would never have thought of that.
Yeah, there's just so much things like that. That's why the most neutral thing is actually probably best. And anyways, while I was working like 2-3 years on that and stuff, I realized finally after getting the product into people's hands and getting their feedback that they were more interested in like a pool game kind of concept thing. Okay. So I did a pop-up shop at the Sun Devil like marketplace store and to sell my fish food skipping stones. And like, I think the longest process was just to try to perfect the perfect skipping stone, but also I had like a big learning curve, and I was also in school at the time too, so I probably didn't move as fast as I am now. But yeah, that's kind of how it started with that concept in like 2017, and then now it's evolved to that flagship product, and now so that flagship product's now in 300 retail stores nationwide, and hopefully we can continue to get it into more and stuff. And then we also have our new kind of game set that has like 9-in-1 backyard game, which has never really been done before, where you can use a game for like land and water and then have these other game modes in it. So it's a new concept that I think will do really well because it's a great value proposition. And it's like, all right, I have a solid product, but now it's like, all right, now what's the marketing strategy?
Yeah.
What's the next thing?
Wow. I think that's crazy.
Yeah. I think first of all, the most impressive thing is when I was originally doing like research on the company and whatnot, and I just saw the map. I tell everyone about the map on your website. I love the map where it just shows all of the retailers that sell the product. Yeah, I absolutely love that. So what do people, how do people describe your game or your products to other people? 'Cause I bet it's very different.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, typically they get the name wrong, which is the first thing. So they call it like Skipping Stone or like,
Okay.
which makes sense. And I'm like, man, maybe I should have like named it that. But then, I don't know. They kind of, it's pretty similar actually. Like the cornhole type game, you skip across the water. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
So are people kind of like, oh, it's like cornhole, but you're skipping a
It's like,
stone?
they say it's like water cornhole, basically.
Oh, okay.
So they say it's like water cornhole. And they kind of forget about the skipping stone.
Right.
In Arizona, with there being an abundance of pools, I feel like
I was
that's
gonna say.
a great product.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Especially like I can, like, you know, going to ASU, I would imagine like everyone. I mean, if I went to ASU at a warm school, I'd be like, this would be at every single get together we'd have because it would just be something that it's like when you go to, you know, a gathering now and there's cornhole set up or there's like whatever that little weird like ball game
ball
is.
with
With like the well, no, not spike ball. Like the three
tri-level.
Yeah, the tri-level. You have to
golf
like
ball, ladder golf.
yeah, that like you see that always. And yeah, the first thing that came to mind was when you were talking about what you're doing with this company was I immediately thought of the Shark Tank spike ball episode. If you guys have seen that, because it is so similar to like your business.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like the coolest part about it is you're creating like your own
kind of niche
community. Not, I guess not just community, but like sport.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. And then, but if you think about spike ball, like that was a thing way before spike ball, like that company actually took it over really. So like,
oh really?
Yeah. So it was trying to become a thing, but it kind of died out. So that's the hard part about games too, is like games can die out if you don't do the marketing right.
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to make sure you're really doing the marketing right. Sometimes you can jump into retailers like too early and stuff. So you got to be careful about that. So there's like a ton of different like things you got to think about too. But yeah, I mean, spike ball's taken off now. So it's just like, if you get the
there's
marketing
tournaments and
right,
stuff.
then
Yeah.
there's even cornhole tournaments too.
I know. I've seen like
Dude, the cornhole tournaments are insane these days.
Over at Bell Park, they do like the entire like I'm not sure what part of it. I've never really been out there, but they do cornhole tournaments like every week, dude.
So the big facility out in Mesa, that's big sports.
that's
Oh, is
Bell
that the
Park.
one? Okay, yeah, they have huge tournaments.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
nuts.
inside
Absolutely.
the building, they have a
Yeah.
building designated for cornhole
Yeah.
tournaments.
Literally
Actually,
unreal.
dude, over off of Guadalupe and Gilbert and Guadalupe, they just put in a new. It's called 9-hole,
Yep.
and it's
That's what I was. Yeah.
it's literally only for
That's
cornhole.
insane.
Yeah.
It's a massive building.
I mean,
only
it's
for
super
cornhole.
entertaining, which is
I mean, but think of the expense. I mean, we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But
wait. There was another thing I was going to ask you about that. Now it's kind of escaping my mind. But when you were doing like your initial kind of marketing or branding on, I mean, it's kind of like one of those catch-22s, right? To get a lot of people to play it, you need a lot of people to play it, kind of thing, right? It's like.
Yeah,
You know, it's just like
gotta be
it's like what it
gotta
is,
be a
right?
Cool game. If
Exactly.
it's not a cool game, then people aren't going to go out of their way to be like, "Hey, let's play this" or whatever.
Yeah. So how
Not gonna
did you initially start that when you were kind of like getting the product going? Because, yeah, I mean, it's a full catch-22. Like you need people playing it for people
Yeah.
to want to play it.
I mean, in a way, it was kind of like it was good timing with Kickstarter, and like Facebook ads were doing really good at that time. So Facebook ads were working really well for my Kickstarter campaign. So I launched a Kickstarter, and within like 8 hours, I was able to be fully funded with my Kickstarter campaign,
Nice.
just because I did a lot of lead generation beforehand, and then I just emailed everyone when I launched.
Nice.
And then so everyone just funded it right away.
So this is also for everyone listening. That is like a very high level marketing technique. It's not
Yes.
normal for someone to be like, all right, I'm starting a business and I'm launching a product. Let me do this on the front end. Like that is very unique.
It took a year for me to learn how to do all the Kickstarter stuff.
that's
Yeah.
actually super informative because I'm in the process of doing almost identical to what you're talking about, and that's super interesting. So you did a lot of upfront like lead gen, capturing email addresses.
Was it more so, are you interested in this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. I had a page with just like my video, and then it was like, hey, put in your email for pre-order discount of like 50, something crazy, like 50% off or something.
Nice.
And then you just get a bunch of emails, and if people are interested, and then you just say, okay, we're like, you
Launching.
prep them. So it's like, hey, we're getting ready to launch. And then you launch, and then it's like, hopefully the idea is that they convert well enough. So you gotta you gotta just really have a really solid video that explains everything thoroughly. It's got to be cool. Like for Kickstarter, people only want to fund like
cool,
like
unique, exciting
different
things. Yeah.
like that has a wow factor.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard too if it's not technology, because technology, it's easier to kind of wow people with technology because
sure.
like magic or something.
Yeah.
So technology typically does better. Products do good on Kickstarter. You can't really do like a service based thing on Kickstarter. There's probably other platforms for that, but yeah, that's a whole thing. And I actually had a mentor that helped me learn all this stuff, and he kind of trained me and he gave me all the materials to read and stuff.
Nice.
And he was like, all right, before you even talk to me, like, here's all the materials, read all this, listen to like 50 of these podcasts, take notes, and then you can actually efficiently communicate with me. And then we can have a meeting then. So he was kind of like the hard professor.
That's
awesome.
That's a good way to do it though.
A lot of people don't even have that. That's awesome.
And I do the same thing when people ask me like, hey, like, can you help me with Kickstarter? I'm like, all right, here's all the,
you're like, here you go.
And then if you want to put in the work and come back to me like I did.
Yeah, you want people to have skin in the game,
Yeah.
you know, before all that. So now I'm curious. You said you did a year of research. How long were you building leads before you launched that campaign? And do you remember a rough estimate of what you spent on ads for that?
That's exactly what I was getting to.
Okay.
So actually I had some, before I met the Kickstarter mentor, I had several campaigns flop, and I was trying to do like eco-friendly skipping stones and the fish food ones. And so I kind of was playing around with it. I'm like, all right, so me doing it myself doesn't work, or me trying to like educate myself like alone isn't working. So I need like a mentor. I need someone that's already done it or is doing it too, or just has more business experience. And that's what I was able to find just by chance, because I just kind of came across him, and he was like, because I was trying my third Kickstarter campaign, and he was like, oh, you're doing a Kickstarter campaign too? And like, so we kind of hit it off from that, and we were helping each other out. And then he was telling me everything that he was doing. But yeah, so that, but from the start of me doing my research, it was like a year until I launched it. And then marketing wise, I don't even know where it was. Like we broke even, like we didn't make money off of it, but the idea was to get
like brand notoriety or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like Dick's Sporting Goods took notice. Hammaker Schlemmer, which is like one of the oldest catalog companies, wanted to buy after that. So we had purchase orders right out the gate. We even had like 3 like toy companies reach out to me and kind of scare me into licensing deals and stuff.
Classic.
So there were some really good guys, and then there were some guys that were like hard sellers, and it was like, all right, this is brutal. But but it was cool. It was cool to see that like everyone took notice from that. And then it was
that was all from the Kickstarter?
great. Yeah, proof of concept and everything. Yeah.
That I honestly, like I tell people all the time when they're like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about doing a Kickstarter or something like that. You know, I think the funding is cool, and I think that's obviously important, but I think the more important aspect of it is proof of concept. Like, is this worth buying a container? Is this worth, like, you kind of get to vet whether you have a minimum viable product before you actually dump a ton of money into that product.
Yeah, and go back to your question about like marketing spend and stuff. I think I spent like $5,000 on the video, and then I learned Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, so I was able to save money on that.
Nice.
Most people have to spend like $3,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then
Shane and I love those products, by the way. We spend tons of time in those.
Yeah.
Almost too much.
Yeah.
And then like I used a marketing company called GelUp, and so I think, but then I did ad spend before, so I think ad spend before was like $5,000 probably, and just Facebook ads for lead generation. And then after that, we had GelUp starting to run ads, and they got commission too from it. But I think in total it was probably like around 20,000. So if you think about it, 20,000, and then I sold like 60,000 or something. Yeah. After all of it, because I did the Indiegogo on demand afterwards.
There you go.
So yeah, it was broke even, but it got me to got a lot of units out there, so that helps to increase marketing. And then Cheddar News reached out to me too, and they have like millions of subscribers and followers.
Nice.
Like they're at all the gas stations and stuff. So that was great for branding and right from the get go. So I mean, that Kickstarter was probably one of the best things that I did for like branding.
It really kickstarted.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, that's the hardest part when you're launching something is, you know, there's a million things you have to focus on, but you know, knowing that, hey, people want my product is, I mean, that helps so much.
Yeah, it helps everything. Like it helps if you try to get investors, it helps like retailers to know, okay, people are actually going to pay for this if I have it in my stores. It helps me make me feel good about like selling.
I've spent a lot of time and
continuing to do it and stuff. So
So you did Kickstarter. that kind of really kickstarted your journey.
Yeah.
So I guess from there, how many units did you end up selling for your Kickstarter for?
Yeah, so Kickstarter campaign was, so I ordered like 6,000 after that because I was able to get a loan from like proof of concept too.
Yeah.
So that led to me being able to get a loan as well. But yeah, I mean, the Kickstarter campaign, I think it was like 1,200 units. And so one container, we basically I sent to Georgia and they just fulfilled all my Kickstarter orders.
Nice.
So one container was gone after that. And then I had the rest of the containers come into California. I had a learning curve with like fulfillment centers and stuff.
Real quick, did you do a 20-foot container?
So I did one 40-foot container to Georgia because the boxes were pretty big. Now we've reduced the size of the boxes so we can fit a lot more into a container now. But I mean, still for a cornhole thing set, it was still really reduced. So I did a pretty good job on that, but it can always be improved and stuff.
Yeah.
So I sent one 40-foot to Georgia and then like 2 40-foots to California and a 20-foot. So like 4 containers in total. And I had some issues in California with my fulfillment center because they were still kind of like a startup. And so I was getting charged for like them putting like stones in like a massive box.
Oh,
and so it was like extra skipping stones. And then I would have to like pay extra money for them to pick and pack everything. But it was like excessive to every degree. So then I was like, wasn't really expecting that because my first fulfillment center was great. Like they were like great cost because my mentor actually recommended me to use them.
Mm-hmm.
But then I didn't even think to look at reviews or something with Chipmunk. And I just went off of one recommendation and then, that was tough. But then it cost a lot to move the inventory too. Cause I was like, all right, I can't keep using these guys. They're going to like they're going to continue to cost me a ton of money. Yeah. So I moved all my inventory to another warehouse and I started doing it myself and that was fine, but it just costs a lot to move your inventory. So
a ton. Yeah. We talked about that a lot. Like there goes all your margin when you're moving it and spending all the time on it.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Soaks them all up. So did you have an order in with your manufacturer prior to your Kickstarter or
no? So
did you wait for your Kickstarter to be fully funded and then what was the wait time?
Yeah. So it's kind of, you do it in a way where it's like, so you have to do it strategically too. Cause like you set a goal of like 11,000, but in reality, that's not even going to be enough to reach the minimum order quantities.
Mm-hmm.
But you do that so that people feel comfortable. Like, oh, it hit its goal. You can fulfill it and stuff.
Exactly.
And you get more and more and more and more. Cause people are like, oh, okay, it's funded. Like,
super successful. Going through it. Yeah.
And then that helps. But if for whatever reason at the end of the Kickstarter campaign, even if you're fully funded, you can always be like, okay, is this enough for me to manufacture? Am I still going to be able to do it? You can refund everyone's orders, even if you're successfully funded. But it's just that's the strategy to kind of go about doing it. But that Kickstarter campaign didn't give me enough for me to reach my minimum order quantity at the time. You know, this was my first run, so I didn't know like what a solid minimum order quantity really was. In reality, it's probably like a minimum order quantity typically is like 1,000 to 2,000, but they were saying it was like 6,000 or I don't know. So like, you learn how to negotiate and stuff.
Yeah. The manufacturers always want you to buy like 4 times as much and pay for it way up front.
Yeah. But still like, it seemed like a solid amount because I had summer coming up too right after that. So I was like, I want to have extra for summer and I want to sell and stuff and continue to do that. And I was like, if I could do this much for my Kickstarter campaign, then I can for sure do this much. And, but then you're like, like, it's a whole different ballgame. Like this isn't a ongoing Kickstarter campaign. You know, you got to restructure your whole marketing strategy for your different sales channels and stuff.
Yeah. And then you're like, I've got all this inventory piling up that I need to move. Like I need to sell.
Yeah. So, and then the storage, then you have storage costs and all these other things. So it's like,
which is probably the thing that kills most product-based businesses is when inventory doesn't sell and they have to start paying storage and it just starts getting tough.
Crazy.
Like it took the dog stones a while to start moving too. Like I've been sitting on like 1,000 units for a while, but now finally it's starting to snowball a little bit on Amazon. But like it could take products a long time to start seeing that kind of snowball effect. So if you're sitting on units that are like really big, like especially like the game sets or something, then that could be really expensive.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about it all the time with my partner for Direction Desk, the office furniture company we have. I mean, our products are huge. So when those don't move, it is, and they're heavy, right? They're just a much bigger deal than, if you have something like, we talk about, product-based businesses where you're selling charging cables or something very small. I mean, you can keep 1,000 of those on a half a pallet. Like they're so small that it really doesn't matter. But yeah, the bigger the product, the harder it gets generally.
That's crazy. So take me through, after you get done with Kickstarter, you ship those first out. What's the next step in the journey?
And and give us a timeline. So this was a year after, basically?
So Kickstarter, yeah. So I had a great response from my backers too, because most of the time, like, inventory isn't delivered to them on time, and they run into all these issues. But I put a lot of buffer time in it and stuff, so I was actually able to hit my time exactly, like April of 2021. So I hit the exact month, and everyone got all their inventory like right on time. So everyone was super happy. They were leaving great reviews and stuff.
Oh, that'll help out quite a bit then.
That did help with like having the initial kind of like people rally around and have that community and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, so after that, it was like, okay, now I need to fulfill a Dick's Sporting Goods order. So I did 50 stores with Dick's Sporting Goods to start out with. And so I learned how that all worked. There's paperwork and stuff and it's a whole different process. And
I want to learn that too. So be ready for that question.
Yeah. It's a whole nother thing. So that's the good thing, I guess, with jumping in retailers. You can learn the process and stuff. But then if you don't have like another marketing strategy ready to go, like say Facebook ads decides not to work one day, then it's like you got to have another marketing strategy ready to go. So it's like you got to diversify your marketing strategies, and you got to diversify your sales channels too. Like if I decided not to like jump onto Amazon because I was like, oh, so like my website's doing good, I get better margins, I have my Facebook ads are working. But if I had chose not to diversify to Amazon, which I was reluctant to, then now Amazon's my top sales channel. And that I would have died as a business, because right when Facebook ads, and so many businesses probably did die right when Facebook ads stopped working. Yep. So the next thing was like, okay, Dick's Sporting Goods. And then it was Amazon. So that started. I wish I did it sooner, but it still did pretty good. And then it was like, all right, now Facebook ads aren't working. Like, what's the new marketing strategy? And then it was like, all right, now we're shifting gears to like Amazon ads, which that's working really good, and that's set up the way it needs to be. But now it's like, okay, we have like our direct to kind of consumer like marketing strategy and stuff, but now we still need like a new kind of wholesale strategy. Right. How are we going to make sure? And it's also a game, like the part of the game is, I guess, to get as many games out there as possible.
Yeah.
The more games you get, basically the more games you sell, the more you'll sell to the people who play those games.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and you have a little bit more product for like a Dick's or somebody to.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like how a spike ball was, right? Like one person in a friend group would buy a spike ball and everyone would play it, and they'd be like, that's so much fun. I want my own set when I go to family or when I go to a different friend group or whatever it is. So it's just, one of those things. The more players, the better, really. Yeah.
And then they're asked, hey, where'd you get it? Amazon. Okay, I know Amazon. I trust Amazon. Like we even like integrated Amazon to my website because like the website's conversion rate went way down ever since Facebook ads. So it's like, why don't we just have Amazon on our website where they can buy directly?
So a lot of brands will actually, if they don't want to spend the time or research on their own website, they actually direct to Amazon because they know that Amazon spends billions of dollars in conversion. And so they're like, people trust Amazon. We don't have the manpower to basically, replicate that. So we're just going to do it, on Amazon.
Eventually that might change where I want to spend the time and money to invest into rebuilding my website and all that stuff. But I feel like now is not the right time unless you have like a totally unique, different marketing strategy that drives a ton of traffic to your website.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
all right, I want to talk about the retailers now.
I was going to say, so we got off. So getting into the retail, it sounds like they came to you.
Yeah, well, they came in from the Kickstarter, right?
Well, Hammaker Slimmer did. I reached out to Dick's Sporting Goods. I left them a voicemail.
So all right, walk us through this process because this is so many. So we have, I think, primarily service-based businesses on here. And so when it comes to products, so far. And when it comes to products, I think it's a type of business that, at least in the startup phase, no one learns about because they are far less profitable than service-based businesses. And just much harder. So walk us through that. You wake up one day, I want to sell in Dick's Sporting Goods. Like, what did you then do?
Yeah. Well, I actually knew a guy knew knew people that were salespeople that kind of knew how to price things. So they kind of gave me like a template for like a sales PowerPoint and stuff. So I used that template as my first sales PowerPoint. And then they helped me understand like some of the terms and like the pricing and how that works. So you kind of have to understand that, because if you go into your first meeting and you look like a complete amateur, it's not going to look good.
Or they'll take advantage of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I actually had some of those people on my first few calls with my retailers, which...
And you're doing like Zoom calls?
Yeah, so it was Zoom calls because everything was like still COVID mode.
Right.
So, but like recently I've started to go to like the headquarters and stuff. Like last month I went to a few headquarters, and so that was cool. But yeah, it was a totally different, like Zoom calls work too really well. Right. But yeah, you just have like a 1 hour, sometimes 30-minute meeting, and you go through your products and you go through why you think the branding is there to sell in their stores. And it's like, my big thing was like, hey, we did a Kickstarter campaign. It did great. We were also on Cheddar News. Like, the branding is already pretty much there, and we think it will sell in definitely your top stores. Right. And you know, it did. So it's like, but then also you run into things too, where sometimes like it's not just like retailers have issues too. Like they have marketing stuff, problems that happen. So sometimes, you know, they can fall through too, just because of like other issues that maybe they're going through right now. But it's always good to like maintain those relationships, come back to them when things are good or whatever. And also as you develop new products, and, but it's hard to balance it too, because it's like, okay, do I want to use some like nationwide coverage? Like, do I want to try to get on the Today Show? Do I want to try to get on Shark Tank? Do I want to try to do all this stuff before I get into a bunch of retail stores? Because you might only get one shot to get that coverage. So if you're in a ton of retail stores and then you get that coverage, and you can get a ton of sales from that. But also it's like, you don't want to wait too long, because then if you don't have that branding, and then they might kick you out of the stores, and then it's like, great, now it's going to be twice as hard to get back in.
Right. So what was that initial contact? Like, you just went to Dix.com,
found
like a
phone number.
Yeah, I just Googled it. Like,
really?
So there's a few strategies that I've used. So one is,
because I know every retailer is going to be different, but
one is just obviously LinkedIn. You just look, but you have to find like the specific buyer for your category. You can't just talk. You can't just be like, oh, this is a buyer for Dick's Sporting Goods, and think you can just talk to them. Like, it has to be the specific buyer for that category. So first you have to, and it's all labeled differently. So like some stores call it different things. Like some it's like water sports, some it's like totally different things. I don't know. But so you got to watch out for that. But then once you find the right person, then it's like, okay, can I like figure out what their email format is? And you can get creative on figuring out what their email format is. And that has like, and then also I would say don't hire salespeople, because I mean, you can, but they want to talk to the owner. They want to talk to you. Like, I've had probably 80% response rates from all the emails that I sent out to buyers, just because like I'm reaching out to them directly, and they want to, they have so much work they have to do. Like, they don't want to have to go through a bunch of people to get the information that they need. So they're willing to spend a little bit of time or like write you back if you're the main guy that they need to talk to. Right. And
it shows that you're more invested in them, by you're not just like hiring someone to go sell a product, right? Like, you're like, this is my baby. Like, this is very important to me.
Yeah. And then the other way, like with Dick's Sporting Goods, like if that didn't work, my plan B is like, all right, I'm just going to call the headquarters and ask for the person that I know I need to speak to. And let's pray that they actually send me to that person. And then if they do, hopefully they answer. If they don't, I was actually trained not to leave a voicemail, but it actually worked in this situation. So
trained not to leave a voicemail, because then you're like, just
because then they know who you are.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then they'll avoid you. But I mean, it's different depending on what type of sales it is. So I guess in this situation, it could work if you have like a solid proof of concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
dang. That's and so how did you go about, this is a little bit with retailers, but how did you go about, you know, did they ever talk about you sell direct to consumer, or was there any combos about, you know, was a big selling pitch saying, hey, I'll put a map on my website, basically directing traffic to you? Like, how did those combos go? Because I've been in part of those combos with Direction Desk, and they're not fun combos because the first thing dealers or retailers will say is like, you sell direct to consumer. Why should we carry your product kind of thing? Especially if you're, if your wholesale pricing isn't great, if they don't have enough margins, they're just going to straight up say no. So how did you navigate that kind of area?
Well, on the pricing side of things, I was like, I don't need to, which I don't know if this is the right way to look at it, but I'm always like, I want to give them the best deal. I view them as my customers. So it's like, I want to give my customers the best deal I can. I want to give my retailers, which are also my customers, the best deal as I can. So I try to price it to where it's like hard to say no, where it's like, okay, this is a good deal. And they kind of know that, which typically in my category is like 50% at least. Sometimes they want more than that, which is crazy. Yeah. What was the other question? There's pricing and
mainly how you had those combos with them. Were they ever, hey, you're selling direct to consumer?
Any pushback?
Yeah, any pushback?
So there's another pushback thing that sometimes retailers will do where it's like, hey, we want to test you online first, and then if that does well, then we'll get you into retail. But that's tough because sometimes you have a product that just sells better retail, where it's like in person and emotional, and it's emotional purchase. And also, if their Facebook ads or whatever their marketing strategies aren't working for them, then it's not necessarily the product. And then your product can get like a bad kind of rep from the beginning and then not even make it to the stores. So if you can kind of skip that, then that's always better. I try to avoid as much as possible, like getting put on a website as like a test. And then I love to like test in retail because that's where you're actually going to get like a good test, a solid test. But I mean, you can do it that way too. And in some cases I still have to do it that way. So,
but they didn't give you too much pushback on the fact that they were like, hey, we'll take your product on, but we don't want you selling direct to consumer.
Yeah. So a lot of retailers are scared of like Amazon. I haven't had a ton of pushback for some reason though from that.
Could be the product too.
It could be such a good niche.
It could be like, it could be a niche. It could be like the category. But yeah, I mean, they do mention it where it's like, okay, what do you sell? They just don't want you to be selling
cheaper than them, right?
Yeah, on Amazon. Because like if Amazon's cheaper than it is in their stores, then it's like, okay, how are we going to compete with them?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And they'll get mad at you too. If they see any prices are off, they'll like call you up and they'll be like, hey,
I mean, retailers across the board, a lot of their agreements have clauses in there that you can't sell the product for cheaper than what they're pretty much listing for. Amazon is actually big on that. If they ever catch you selling it on your own website cheaper than Amazon, and you have to be a big enough player, but they'll basically take you off, or they'll tell you to reprice. Yeah, they're pretty strict on that, because they're trying to be a costly. They're trying to be the Walmart of online.
Yeah, and I've heard that they can hurt your like search volume and stuff.
For sure.
Stuff
your
like
seller rating. It's all about your seller rating.
Right?
They have a seller rating.
They have your seller rating.
If you run out of inventory, that's another thing that will ding your volume, which I'm out of inventory, so that's great. But so I have to build that back up in the summer.
Their sales. So the biggest thing on Amazon for a lot of people who haven't sold is sales velocity. Once you have sales, is maintaining those sales. Low return rate and good customer satisfaction is really like the big ones. And then, obviously there's a like million other things that go into your seller rating, but if you could do those three things, and you can, which is really hard because in a growing product-based business, like you said, it's hard to keep inventory at that because, you might go from, 5 sales a month to 20 to 30 to 100. Like it's so hard to plan, especially when, if Amazon starts ranking you really well. I mean, the potential for sales could be 30, 40 units a day. Like,
that's crazy.
I think we had like a 10x like increase from the previous year to the next year. So it's like, okay, am I going to 10x this bigger number now, or is it going to be a smaller multiplier, or like there's no way of knowing. Crazy. So it's like,
it's crazy because a lot of businesses, product-based businesses, when they're starting, they have that exact problem. I mean, if you've ever read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, it's the Nike founder. I mean, he talks about that. The guy last week, I talked to the guy who founded Uggs. He talked about that, like sales just 10x, 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 10x. And you always think, all right, we did $1 million. There's no way we're going to do 10 million. And then you do 10 million. And you're like,
there's no way.
Holy crap. There's no way we're doing 100, And
next thing you know, you're doing billion.
And that's just like how it is. And it's really hard to get inventory for it.
And the only way around that really is just like to reduce risk is to just have the fastest like turnaround time, like manufacturing speed,
1 month, 2
like,
month, 3 month kind of thing.
Honestly, the only way around that maybe is like make it in the US.
It really
you don't have to ship it. Like it takes a month to ship.
It's not even the shipping lately. It's just the why can't I think of it? Importing it. The
customs.
Customs is like ridiculous right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, customs, shipping, manufacturing time. So if we only had to deal with the manufacturing time and then you truck it, then it's like, all right,
good.
that's like
What kind of lead time are you dealing with right now?
I round up to like 3 months probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not terrible.
It isn't. It
Some
really isn't.
products are a lot worse than 3 months.
Yeah. I mean, I have pretty basic, like it's not too difficult. I mean, there is, with the target's a little bit more difficult, but like the game modes, it's not like.
Was it hard finding your manufacturer?
Yeah, yes and no. Like because I've been switching manufacturers because some like their prices are just too high or something happens where it's like, so you're constantly trying to like improve
and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm constantly like every day I talk to like my manufacturers and try to push things along. So it is a long process, especially like I'm trying to piece everything out too now. So before I had 1 or 2 manufacturers, now I have like 20, 30 manufacturers that I'm working with.
Wow.
And you need backup manufacturers too. So that's
For
why
sure.
it's like, you can't just rely on one quote. Cause if you do that, then you're in a chokehold and you're like, basically like you have to do whatever thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you have these purchase orders you have to fulfill. And then you only have one manufacturer that has created samples and that you trust. And then you're like, all right, well, if they increase their prices, which they always try to do near the end,
Always do.
then you're screwed. So it's like I've learned to have like more than 1 or 2, and then you have some negotiating power too if you just do it the right way. But
when you did this, I'm assuming that most of your capital came from this Kickstarter to get most of this manufacturing going. How I'm assuming that there's like some sort of molds that need to be created or some sort of special tooling for your manufacturer. How do you, go about that? Because that stuff's not cheap.
Luckily, I had a mentor in engineering. Like he had an engineering kind of 3D printing manufacturing business, and so we actually did that whole process of like 3D printing and all this stuff in the beginning for our first, like for one of our prototypes. And I was like, this is a pain in the butt. Like this is like a lot of work. I mean, it looked great. It was professional, but it's like now. Okay, we have a proof of concept, but like we need to completely redesign this to make it easy to set up where we don't need a bunch of molds. So the goal is always like, how can we eliminate the molds? Like what already exists out there that we can use to make this stuff?
Yeah.
Because if you don't have to buy molds, then
it's ridiculous.
Totally different.
Save a lot more money.
Yeah, 5, 10, 15 grand.
So when you're going to manufacture a product, it's like, okay, how can I get creative to use parts and pieces that already exist out there that can easily set this thing up? Whatever it is, furniture or whatever it is, to eliminate the use of molds. Because molds are super expensive. And then what happens if you have to change your design or manufacturers? Because like your molds can get stuck out of like I ran into an issue where I was using a third-party logistics company to find like an item that was really hard for me to figure out how to find. Yeah. And I was stuck with them because they knew the manufacturer. They wouldn't tell me the manufacturer because they're a middleman. Yeah. So I'm paying them, and then they mark it up. So like, So and then it's like, okay, how am I going to get my molds? I spent like $17,000-$20,000 on these molds, and now it's stuck with these guys. Yeah. And like, how am I going to get that back? Luckily, they're solid dudes, so they're like, willing to help me out.
That's awesome.
Because I was working with them for a long time, so I had built a pretty good relationship with them. We had bumps in the road, but in the end, he's like, they had ethics and stuff.
Cool.
And
that's good.
Cool. That's good. That's rare. I feel like.
Smokes,
I mean, I had to pay maybe more than I thought I owed for like shipping and stuff, but I mean, it's still worth it. Like,
you still don't have to go through that again.
A ton of money from having to repeat all your molds.
Have you searched in America to find manufacturers? It's not easy. It's not easy.
I think the best bet is to like just manufacture yourself in a way if you can. Maybe it's not like all of it. Like maybe it's not the whole thing, but like if you can do certain parts and pieces, that's good. Then you're eliminating some of the kind of factors that go into lead time and stuff. And then also people just love made in America stuff. So you can get a little bit of a competitive advantage when it comes to certain retailers, because certain retailers love that. And you can get incentives from U.S. government stuff, and they have a bunch of programs
tax
that
breaks and all that other stuff. That's crazy.
But you got to figure out a way to automate it because labor is gonna like
kill way up. Yeah, it's a lot harder.
So we tackled the Kickstarter, we tackled the manufacturer, we tackled you got into retail.
Now I want to go like more on the timeline. So now, you know, being in retailers, having things set up online and whatnot, you know, where kind of are you at now? So you're out of inventory for the most part. Where, walk us through from being in retailers and maybe supplying some of those purchase orders to now being where you're at now.
Yeah. So now I'm in a situation where it's like I need a lot of money. Like I need cash. I need to grow. And is it like, all right, so I have a few options. I could do loans or I can get angel investors, which I just had a phone call with a guy that was just called me up and he wanted to be my lead investor and stuff. And like, that's good. Like but there's like several options I need to consider. Cause it's like, do I want to start diluting my equity at this point?
Right.
I have 100%. So I have that ability to do that if I need to, but it's like, do I want to do that on, like just like inventory? I also have to look at like working capital, like what resources that they have available that I could potentially utilize. But it's like, I'm in a position where I'm like, okay, like what we were just talking about, like how much is Amazon really going to grow next year? And how much am I going to balance? Am I going to overbuy like I've done before? Or am I going to underbuy like I've also done before? And what's the right balance? And it's just kind of like a little bit of a guessing game. So that's kind of where I'm at. And it's like, I come up with projections. All right, this is how much money I think I need to get. And this is the time I need to have it by. And do I think I can get a loan to give me that money in time? Or am I going to need something faster where I'm going to have to take on like an angel investor or something?
Right.
Because your level of growth is kind of based at that point on like inventory
For sure.
and like I guess sales too, but you don't really know how much your sales can really grow if you don't have enough inventory.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like I honestly will probably just be like, screw it. I trust myself enough that I will just like buy as much inventory as I possibly can, and then hopefully I have like the storage and like the ability that if I bought too much, then I won't get completely screwed on storage and stuff. But like also another way to reduce the risk too is just like reducing the size of your packaging and stuff. So I've been able to significantly reduce the size of my boxes a lot. So that's going to help with fitting more into a container and then saving money on shipping and then also the potential storage costs that I could have.
For sure. I was going to say the shipping is huge. I know we learned a lot about, what do you mainly ship with, FedEx or UPS?
So I use like Shopify discounted
small
rates. So they use UPS, but I use both. It depends on like.
So each one has kind of different rules, but we learned, which is crazy, when we first started selling desks, was we noticed our competitors weren't selling 72-inch long desks. They were selling 71 and a quarter inch desks. And we were like, why are they doing that? Well, we found after we shipped a ton of them that FedEx dims you for like sizes 72. Over 73 or something like that. And once you add the boxes, it's over 73. And it's like a $50 surcharge. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was like unreal. So then, you kind of learn those things. And as you make things smaller, more efficient, all that stuff, I mean, it saves across the board tremendously. So I could totally see that making a big impact on you.
Yeah. And then shipping to your customers too, like it saves them money too. They're not having to spend like $20 for shipping or whatever, something crazy. So
for sure.
And most of the time we have to eat those costs. So it's like, that saves more money for us too.
Yeah. And I'll say, I think you're tracking right on getting more inventory than less because you have the demand for it, which companies don't always have the demand for. So like I met with a couple that sold a ergonomic furniture company. I won't say the name because I think they don't want a lot of people knowing about it, but they sold it for like $80 million like 3 years ago, like a massive company. And they preached hard on if you have excess cash, you buy inventory. You want to be the type of company that has excess inventory when no one else does, because when those retailers or those people come to you for purchase orders, you might have spent an extra 3, 6, 10 grand at that point holding that inventory. But when they come to you with that order and you fulfill it immediately, that goes so much further than the cost of, now I have to pay this extra, storage for all that. And they were like, we went from 5 employees to 10 to 20
like
to 100.
Yeah. If it's a new product where you don't know the demand and stuff.
If you don't know the demand, it's totally different. But if you know there's going to be, a want for it, they were saying as they grew their company, they always felt poor. They're like, we have no money, but all their money was in their warehouses. Like they had tons of inventory.
It's
on
like
their
Mr.
balance sheet.
Beast,
Like
man.
real estate.
He never spends any on himself. He just puts it right back into the company.
Yeah,
Now
right
that
back in there.
One day he can sell it for billions. Like,
And
Billions,
it
yeah.
motivates you, you know, if you're like, man, we're pretty cash poor right now, but I've got a whole bunch of inventory. Like I'm going to go sell this, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it makes you a little more driven and motivated. So yeah, I think
True.
you're on the right track with that. Cause that's,
makes it easier to like execute some marketing strategies too. Because when you don't have like inventory, it's like, great. Like, do I really want to do all this marketing right now?
it's so hard to sell something when you're like, hey, will you buy this product? Someone's like, yeah. You're like, all right, give me 3 months. They're gonna be like, I don't want to buy your product anymore.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you want those impulse buys of like, this will be fun. Let me get it.
Yep.
You know?
That's why Kickstarters can be hit or miss too. So it's awesome to
Exactly.
do well.
Yeah.
So give us kind of a rundown of where you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, where are you at? So you're talking about 10Xing and you know, having big demands. Sorry, I had to go over Shane's question like this, but it leads into your question.
Okay, go ahead.
Where are you at right now in terms of revenue? And
right,
and then to Shane's question, where do you see yourself kind of in the future with revenue?
Yeah. So right now, I think I'm at like $500,000 in revenue with having inventory for like about a year. So I forgot my first batch of inventory in like April 2021 at already $500,000, which is definitely one of the fastest growing sporting goods companies, faster than Spikeball, faster than like all these other.
Faster than most product-based businesses, not
Yeah,
just
that's
sporting goods.
insane.
Like that's like unreal.
But I mean, with that, it's like, all right, you don't always want to be the fastest because it's like there's still a
Growing
lot of
pains.
stuff that you gotta like, could go back and kind of like tweak and stuff. But in like 3 to 5 years, I mean, the goal would just be to have like all these like kind of to have like this line extension of products where it's like, okay, just continually adding more game modes to the game set and having all those in like big box retailers and expanding through all the retailers. But then also having like a marketing or like a solid marketing strategy so I could do like my website and get like a lot of sales on my website or Amazon. But like if I was able to pull off all that stuff, then yeah, revenue would probably be like, if I was able to pull off all that stuff, then it would be like probably 20 to like 50 million or more. I think it can get up to probably like 100 million for like a sporting goods product with 9 SKUs.
Mhm.
So then at that point, it's like, okay, what's next? And I'm probably thinking like, and like also how are there ways that you can like make money off of marketing too is like what I'm looking at right now.
Right.
And then, so yeah, there's just so many different avenues. Like, okay, there's event side of things that you can kind of try to tap into. You can build a cornhole like facility thing.
Dude, yeah. I mean, so I learned about Spikeball from a completely different, well, I mean, I guess it's not completely different, but from beach volleyball. I won a beach volleyball tournament and they're like, here, you won this Spikeball set. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but cool. And then I realized, and then it started growing really quickly. But yeah, I was just tapping into, you know, because people play different sports, right? They're all an athlete's an athlete or an activity, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of, like your overall market size is I think, way bigger than just a sporting goods because it's just like it's an activity, really.
You can even manufacture in house, and then all of a sudden, retailers are like, "Oh, you can manufacture in the U.S. Like, can you manufacture these other brands for us?" And then it's like, okay, there's like a totally other business.
Yeah,
that's
totally
making,
different revenue model for that. And so when you say kind of 20 mil, is that U.S. only? Because this is something that obviously can go well, I shouldn't say very easily, but there's most likely a market for it, you know, internationally.
I think that includes international too,
Okay.
like 20 to 50 to maybe like 100. I think you could probably do like 20 annually, like maybe if you do like international and stuff, or if I'm like condensed, like if I only use these 9 kind of SKUs or something, it's going to be something completely different next
Right.
year or the year after that,
Yeah,
probably. So who knows what it's going to look like, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of solid distributors that distribute sporting goods products. And there's like distributors that are specific to Australia. There's a distributor specific to like Europe, and there's all these other distributors that I can start tapping into. And like, that's the better way to do it than hiring like a whole sales team and like trying to
For
build
sure.
out like offices, and like, that's just so much work. It seems like.
Yeah. I mean, you're better off kind of, using like a rep based model, right?
You do
Like
want to control the U.S. though, because the U.S. is like the biggest market and stuff. So you never really want to distribute depending on what your goals are and like how big you want to get. But ideally if you can control the US, that's great. Just control that and then probably use distributors internationally, because then you're having to build out sales teams and like you would need a huge chunk of investor money to like really get that going probably.
So are you a sole man right now? You don't have any employees?
Yeah. It's just, I'm the only full-time employee right now. So I'm having to do like marketing, finance, fulfillment, product development, engineering stuff.
So when I guess within the next 2 to 3 years, 5 years, like when do you see yourself adding employees to help that out? Because I think that'd be a huge.
It would, because where I'm falling short right now is marketing. So I need to have someone focused 100% on marketing. I can't switch gears constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, I can.
It's a totally different beast. You really need like a business developer, kind of like, it does marketing, but it's mainly kind of like making sure the face of your brand is always like amazing.
The buzzword content.
Yeah, like the Monster Energy Girls, right? It's like there's always that perfect branding everywhere you see it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I don't know. I know whatever I am focusing on, I can do really well because I just know so much about like what the customers are wanting and all this stuff. So, but that's not really scalable. So yeah, at some point I'm going to need to get like employees and stuff.
Yeah,
but probably won't be there unless I get investors or something.
Yeah, definitely. There's more cost. It's a cool thing about being a product-based business versus service, right? Service, the first major, endeavor someone does, they hire someone, right? But the first major thing in product-based business stuff is go for a big order. Like let's do a, big 240-foot containers. Like that's your employee, right? Because that's similar cost.
Yeah, and you can do it in a way too, where it's like you partner with people where they're like, it's profit sharing in a way. So you're not really having to like hire a bunch of expensive employees, because like employees are extremely expensive.
Very expensive.
And so what I'm trying to do is kind of build out like partners where it's like profit sharing in a way. So like, okay, what's my marketing partner? What's my manufacturing partners? What's my like people that will make money on the success of the business? And that way you're not having to like, they want it to be successful.
Yeah, you're mitigating
incentivized by it being successful. And then you're eliminating all of the risk of having to hire and fire employees. And that's just so much work. And then I don't want to micromanage a bunch of people if I'm not paying them enough. Like you have to pay them enough or else you're going to have to micromanage and you're going to have to hire other managers to manage them. And I like what I'm doing now because I can learn how to do all these different things. So then when I get to the point where I'm hiring, I know exactly who's going to be able to do a good job.
Yeah. And I mean, you think you're busy now doing all those pieces. Once you start having employees, you're going to start having your HR stuff, your payroll stuff, your accounting gets way more complicated. I mean,
every time I feel like I know what it's like to own a business, it's like there's another
you
level.
Get slapped in the face.
It's like, oh, I didn't know this whole level existed, and it's like there's a whole nother level after that, and it's a whole nother level.
Never
stops. Just keeps learning. But I love that. Like I love to learn because like as long as you're learning, like you're gonna be very successful. As long as you're just learning a ton every day.
Yeah, I mean you're like ahead of most. How old are you?
24.
24. Yeah, like having just the mentality of like, I need to create a product business.
He has the chaser mentality.
Yeah, for sure. Like that is a very rare thing because most people who, honestly, if you look at a lot of very successful product-based businesses, it's guys who have done something previously and then, kind of got started later on, maybe in their 30s or 40s or even 50s.
Yeah.
Because they're hard and you need to learn a lot, right? I mean, as you said, there's a ton to learn in that. There's really not a lot of margin for error.
And you need to make the mistakes too. Like you need to have those errors. You need to make mistakes, but hopefully like on a small scale.
Yeah, so you can eat it.
So then you can so you can eat it. But then because even if you say you're in between making one decision or the other, and it's like, okay, you happen to make the right decision. Well, now it's like, what if I did the other decision? Would it be better? And then you have to still make that same mistake. Like you're still gonna have to make the mistakes. You're just gonna have to hopefully learn to make them at like a small scale. But yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know if that's if that's the right path. And you gotta try it.
You don't know until time goes on. Yeah.
It's kind of like A/B testing, but for the duration of the
the whole thing. Everything.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for anybody that's looking to do? I'm not trying to wrap this up.
No, I was actually just thinking. I was like, I want to go into that question because I think it's my favorite part of the podcast, but I didn't know if you're there yet. But
advice for people that are 20, 30, 50. We have a range of listeners, but that want to start a product-based company, maybe some of your trials and tribulations, or like this overall, this is what you should probably focus on first, read these books or whatever. What do you got for us?
Yeah, and I would say to preference this question is, I think product-based businesses were very popular maybe 4 years ago. You heard FBA and all these dudes flashing Lamborghinis and saying it was super easy.
Gosh, yeah.
And it's so much harder than it looks, especially in today's day and age, because it's not just throw up an Amazon listing and you're going to make bank, right? It's very different. So, touch on that, but also touch on the fact that how different it is now versus how it might have been maybe 5-10 years ago with.
This is a very loaded question.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, if you're like looking to start up a business and everything, the best thing is just don't get demotivated, because like as long as you're continuing to go and like work on different things and try to like not be really focused on all the noise. If you can, delete your social media stuff. But at the same time, I've had to re-download it for marketing and stuff. But if you can that's such a competitive advantage if you can just like not listen to all that noise, and because that will demotivate you, and you have to have delayed gratification. You have to be very, very patient, and you got to know that, okay, the exponential, there's exponential growth that happens.
The hockey stick.
Yeah. But like in the beginning, it's going to look like you're making absolutely no progress, and like maybe just a little bit, but then you'll see slow multiplies. And then all of a sudden it's just going to go boom. And you're like, have this tipping point, but it's going to take a while, maybe like 5 or 10 years to maybe even hit this tipping point. So it's like, you got to know that going into it, but you still have to you still have to be like super motivated, where it's like, okay, you could still potentially run into that tipping point earlier than later, but it's like, there's just so many learning things that you're going to have to learn. But as long as you're like learning a ton, then you should be happy and kind of satisfied with knowing that you're learning more than like you're investing into a college degree, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Of like starting up a business. So as long as you're happy knowing that, and you're focused on actually making an impact, helping other people's lives, and not really focused on the money. Like if you're focused on making a lot of money, then you're going to switch gears to a totally another business, and you're just going to go right back to the end of the line.
Yep.
Right.
So that's why so many people, and it's sad because like so many people want to make a ton of money, and then the ones that are super motivated that want to make like money for themselves and be free, it's like they jump too much. They jump around way too much.
They're searching
and then they go,
for that quick fix, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you have to have delayed gratification. You have to be more invested into learning and helping other people. But like you still got to be profitable and stuff. Like you can't like be like, oh, I'm gonna give away stuff. But like I just mean like helping people through your products and knowing that like, hey, by making it a certain price, like this is going to create as much value as possible, or by including these features, this is going to create as much value as possible. It's like, how can I maximize the value that I'm generating for the customers? And then how am I also, through this whole process of trying to maximize the value through the products, how am I also going to learn as much as possible so that, okay, if this business doesn't do well, then I can do the next thing or whatever. But you just kind of like, you can't give up and you can't get demotivated, and you're going to have days, especially in the beginning, it's really, really tough because you don't have a lot of traction. You're like, what am I even doing? I'm just doing research. I'm like hitting brick walls every other day. So in the beginning, it's super tough. And then you finally start to get some traction and stuff. And then it becomes a little bit easier. But it takes like, in my case, it took like five years of research and development and stuff. And I never thought it would take that long. Yeah. I thought it would take me like a year or like 30 days or something.
It's crazy.
But yeah.
One of the things that I've learned is that the manufacturing process is such a drag, if you will, and such a demotivating part of it. I'm impressed with the way you're doing. There's just such a delays. There's the shipping times, the communications, all different because you're dealing with, completely on the other side of the world. Yeah. And, it's difficult, but that's cool, man. That's awesome.
I feel like you hit the nail on the head too. Cause it's like that, like saying or exercise where it's like, if you take a penny and you double that amount every day, it's such a grind. A penny turns into 2 pennies and you're like, that was a lot of work for an extra penny. Then 2 pennies turned into 4 pennies. You're like, that was a lot of work. I didn't make anything. 4 turns into 8. You're like, I'm literally going nowhere. But eventually that turns into like millions and millions of dollars, like within a month, within 30 days, right? If you do that every single
And then
day.
it looks like an overnight success.
Exactly. And everyone's like, oh yeah, this overnight success. And you're like, you have no idea the grind I was doing for a penny back then. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think, especially like you said, I mean, just getting off social media. I mean, it's hard. Like right now, you know, in the mortgage industry, I'm like, dude, this is the hardest the mortgage industry I've been in. So many people have left the mortgage industry, but I'm like, the ones who stay in and who grind are going to be so much further ahead of the ones who come back into it later.
And you can't be married to like your original idea. Like it's so easy to be like married to the original idea that you came up with. And like, it's like, how can I take this feedback that I'm getting from customers on the product that I currently have and utilize all the work that I've done with that's generated value for them, but then like tweak things in a way where I'm still utilizing all the work that I've done, but like in a different way, where it's not like you're going to the completely back of the line. You're still utilizing what you've built, but you're just pivoting, and you're just going to have to continue to pivot into different things that are where you have product market fit. So you got to like find that product market fit.
And another thing too is, you know, a lot of people will wait until they have that perfect product, you know, because we're like, hey, we don't want to put our names on something that's not perfect. But
it's me.
If you ever wait for the perfect product, it will never happen.
If you're a perfectionist, that's almost bad
hard
news.
because you have to realize that you might think it's perfect, but then your customers might think it's not perfect, or you know, other way around, right? So you're kind of always just needing to keep going.
That's why it took me 2 years to finally pivot to the pool game, is because I wasn't showing anyone what I was creating. Because I was like, oh, it's not done yet. They're not going to get it. They're going to like say that it's a terrible idea and all this stuff. And I know I'm right. And like, it's like,
and don't quote me on this, but I think it was Salesforce, the owner of Salesforce. He had it in development for 3 years and his developers kept saying, it's not ready. It's not ready. It's not ready. And he just said, screw it. Went live with it and got so much good feedback, even though a lot of stuff wasn't working. Yeah. So much good feedback that was the reason why Salesforce became what it is today. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I love events and stuff, because you can like have them play the games and see
real time feedback,
real raw, unbiased feedback. It's not like your dad or your friends or
whatever. They're like, I love it.
This is a great game.
Keep going, buddy.
Well, how many games do you want to play? Are we done yet?
Yeah. Dang, man. That's super cool. I think that's like pretty much.
That's all I have for now until the next time we have you on in a year, because I want to track.
Yeah, we love. I love seeing kind of like progress.
This is huge. I mean, this is like exactly what my buddy and I are going through, and it's kind of eye opening. Really, I'm like, I kind of want to know what all your mentors' books are. You should send them my way.
Yeah,
I want to read, because we're coming up on a time where we're going to have to go through the whole crowdfunding thing and just go that route. And it's super interesting to hear your story, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Anything you wanted to ask us, or anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
I mean, I'm interested in that flex warehousing space.
Yeah, I know. I was telling him, I was like, I've got extra warehouse space, and he's like, I could use that. Yeah, we'll talk about that after.
But yeah, no, I would just say like keep grinding and don't get demotivated, and just at the end of the day, just know that you've continuing to learn a lot, even if you had a bad day and you had a lot of like issues happen. Just at least now you've taken care of knowing that may not be the right direction to go, and just like you're gonna have to learn that one way or another. So just don't be demotivated and just keep grinding.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. That's all I have.
Cool. Me too. Dude, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Jaron, I appreciate it.
Super
Jaron
awesome.
with Scoring.
Yep.
And that's it. That's all we had. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one.
And actually, let's plug Jaron real quick. So where can everyone learn more about your game? So
yeah.
What's your website?
Scoren.com. So SCORENN.com. So you can learn more about the story, about how to set up your game, all that good stuff, like information on how to use the game and stuff. But then you can also buy it online, and if we're in stock, and yeah, you can see all the different stores we're in. So the stores,
I think the stores thing is the coolest thing ever. Like honestly, the map is cool just to see how much, like how spread out you are.
It's crazy. I went to Florida, and there's this person that was like, "Oh, I've played your game."
Yeah, like super cool.
Like, I'm in Florida, totally different states. Let's play this. This is crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well,
Well, dude.
again, appreciate it. And we'll put all your information into the description as well in the podcast. So everybody can find you there too if you are too lazy to look it up,
LinkedIn.
what Troy said. Or
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
or
There you go.
LinkedIn.
Just
Reach
Jaron
out to him.
Lodge.
If you want to learn, he'll dump you the information and then he'll
And then you have to
figure it out.
soak it in for a little bit.
and then come back.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Might have to rewatch this a few times.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming on.
Thank you for listening to Cheddar Chasers. Love this episode? Head over to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks, and we'll catch you on the next one, Chasers.